Hi friends, welcome to Take 3 Talks. I'm Estefi and I'm going to be your host. So today, I want to meet you with somebody very special on the other side. His name is Meijun Kai and he's my favorite co-host.
Oh, wow.
As you guys know. Hi Meijun.
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm very happy to be here. Where are we right now?
We are in Montego Bay, Jamaica.
Wow.
Yeah. We've been actually dreaming about doing a podcast while in Jamaica, and today felt like a really good day. We decided to stay an extra day at the resort we're in. And actually, we were looking at a topic to hone into, to talk to you guys about. And while looking at our backlog of ideas, some ideas that we've been actually talking about in our personal lives sparked up. Like I would say a few of the words that we're going to touch upon in this episode, we hope to touch upon, but as you know, you're here to be part of the vulnerable off-tangent conversation, so enjoy the ride. Put your seatbelt on. But yeah, so some of the words that I think Major and you were saying is culture. We'll talk a little bit about conflict.
Yeah. And
Families.
family, and there's differences and similarities, and I think that's a great couple of words too. And just how we navigate all those things that you just mentioned in our relationship.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, we are a mixed couple.
Yeah.
I'm Chinese, so I have that Chinese background, but I was raised in Jamaica, so the accent just came out, Jamaica. And that's another culture that has influenced me. And then you're Ecuadorian, right? So you have your Ecuadorian roots, but you've also been exposed to a lot of different cultures as well, especially while you were living in New York.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of different cultures in two different individuals.
Yeah.
And we are learning to apply or learn or not apply the things that we know in those different cultures into our relationship, especially when there's conflict. Like we both deal with conflict so differently, but we learned how to find a middle ground, and that's something I'm very proud of, and that's something that I actually spoke to my parents about, because they are the same culture, but they still have so many differences in how they communicate and deal with conflict within that culture. And I had to share some things that I've learned outside of our culture, that Chinese culture, and things that I've learned while being in a relationship with you. I had to tell them a little bit about how we deal with conflict. And they seemed very open-minded about it and actually surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Surprised meaning
what did you say? Like, what were you saying? And what do you mean by open and what do you mean by surprise?
Right. Okay. So I guess I could start with, so again, we're talking about cultures and conflict, right? So, we're here in Montego Bay and we're with my parents. So in this position that I'm in, I'm trying to make Estefi have such a great time, and my parents have a great time. And so when I find time to hang out with my parents, we talk about different things, right? So the topic of the Chinese culture and how they deal with problems and conflict is so different than how I deal with it with Estefi. For example, when there's an argument or there's something that my mom doesn't like or something that my dad doesn't like, they kind of just go at it a little bit, like blame the other person, and then they sweep it under the rug. That's how they've dealt with conflict all their lives. And that's what I grew up with. So growing up like that, I didn't know how to deal with my conflict, or I run away from conflict. Whenever I have some kind of issue with Estefi, I didn't know how to deal with it back then because of that upbringing and that culture. The Chinese culture of nothing is a big deal, and we don't need to talk about it if we don't have to.
And I don't think it's Chinese necessarily.
Well, it's what I've heard, what I've learned.
Like Chinese only. Because my parents are like that too.
That's true.
You know, like I can relate to that about like the not actually problem solving
Right.
anything. You just like kind of go bicker
Yeah.
and you like supposedly forget about it.
Maybe it's generational
Yeah.
more
Maybe.
than racial or ethnic or
Yeah.
or
But okay,
different cultures.
so you were saying how you shared this, how we conflict with your
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
and they seemed very open. Like, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
So after talking with them about how I've seen conflict being dealt with by them and by other from other stories I've heard from them, just about how everything's just being shoved under the rug, I mentioned how that doesn't feel like it's resolving anything. So I shared with them how you and I, when when we get into any type of issues or any type of problems, we try to be as communicative as possible with each other by either telling the other person that, hey, I need 2 hours to think about this, but I would love to talk about this after, because right now I'm very emotionally charged and I can't deal with it, but I would love to resolve it with you. I've shared that with them about how we've done that, as use that as one of our tools that we've learned from therapy. And I've also shared with them about how when in the moment when something happens, like I screw up, I screw something up, I forgot something that we just talked about, how in that moment when you call me out on it, which you have every right to, because it's something that we've talked about, and you're you're unhappy with the thing that I forgot again. Like, that makes sense, right? No one's wrong. Like, I made a mistake. You were unhappy because you felt like you weren't not heard or weren't seen, or that your reasoning for this thing wasn't valued important enough, right? So makes sense. No one's wrong. So when that happens with my parents, my mom, like, for example, would just immediately go at my dad and tell him, like, how can you forget this again? Like, in the moment, right? They're by the store, they're running a store, and then they were arguing then and there, and she's going at him for like a solid 5 minutes and telling him all these things and how he always forgets, brings up other things that he's forgotten about. And then I'm just saying, and so I told both of them, like, yeah, like, when you do that in the moment, how do you think he's gonna feel, or what do you think you're gonna get from him? He's already feeling like shit for forgetting or doing something bad or mistake or making the mistake. You're upset
and feeling bad for himself for looking like an idiot in front of all these people.
Exactly. So if you keep going at him, you have a 99.9% chance that he's gonna like resolve anything there and there with you.
He's never gonna open.
He's not gonna open up.
Like
he's already like in defensive mode. He's in his turtle shell.
You're never gonna see his pearl.
And I told him, like, sometimes you can implement something that we've learned, like the not now filter, right? Where, yes, you're really mad. You've talked about this 10 times with him. He's still fucked up. Okay, like, gather your thoughts and just note it down, and then when you guys get home from work, over dinner or after dinner, whatever, pull him aside and be like, hey, today this happened. It made me really unhappy because
it's so dramatic.
I know
this happened.
I know.
Okay.
It's usually for people, those small things are so dramatic in the moment because it feels so heavy. Such a small thing, but they feel so heavy. Right? So I was just explaining to them that could be something that they can implement. Like, you didn't like something that either of you have done, like, note it down, and then when you guys get home,
how do you do it?
How do what? How do we do it?
How do you do it?
How do I do it?
There's no we here.
So
you're a person, I'm a person.
Yeah.
So how do you do it when you're like, when there's something that's happened and you're like, I want to talk to her about this.
Yeah.
Like, how do you note it? Do you note it on your phone? Do you note it actually on your head? Like, and then how do you approach me afterwards? And what happens, something that happened before, it doesn't seem as inconvenient anymore? Do you still go at it, or do you save it for another time, or what do you do?
For me, when there's something that I don't like, knowing the type of person that I am that avoids conflict, I'm working on it. um, if you do something that I don't like, I will. I won't say it then and there. I think that's my immediate go-to. I won't say it then and there. I note it in my head first, and then I process it, and then I kind of blank out for like 10 seconds and just like think about it. Like, why did I not like that so much? Like, what about it? And then if it's something that I want to talk to you about, I will like either write it down or just keep it in my head. And then 2 hours later, 3 hours later, towards the end of the day, if it's something that I feel like I have to talk to you about, I will talk to you about it. If
how do you approach me
how
about
to
it?
I usually I like kind of, pull up my pants, pull up my underwear,
Go to the bathroom before.
go to the bathroom, drop a hot one so that I'm like ready for it. No, just kidding, but not really sometimes. But I guess I sometimes I write it out like how I want to say it, like just so that I get it, so I get all my thoughts out onto paper, and then know exactly how I want to say it or how I want to come across. And then
notes on your phone while you're taking a poopy.
yeah, exactly. And then when I really understand what I'm trying to ask or get at, I will kind of write it out, and then I'll pull you aside and talk to you about it.
And how do you pull me aside?
I say, hey, hey Steffi, can I talk to you about something?
Hey, more.
Hey, more.
Or Estefi if it's been really tough.
If it's bad, yeah, I say Estefi. I say, hey, more, can I talk to you about something that's on my mind? That's kind of been like weighing heavy on my heart. I want to talk to you about it. It has nothing to do with, nothing negative really, just a feeling, something I've been feeling.
Or if it's negative, something that you say it's a little bit hard, and I'd like it to be like safe spacey.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where you're trying to get me to say. The safe space. Yes.
Yeah.
We ask for safe spaces.
Like when it's like low stakes and we know that it's gonna be okay, probably to just talk about it then and there. Then we're able to say what you just said, like something like low key, like, hey, I'm more like, I've been thinking about this. There's something I want to get off my chest. Do you have a second to like talk or to like hear me out or whatever?
Yes.
And something that we like to say in between is, yes, of course, what are the expectations? What do you need from me? Like, what does it look like? And we like to do this, especially when the other person asks, like, hey, do you have a minute? Like, there's something I want to share.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to go, we're both like, we both struggle with fix it mode. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to go into fixing the other person. We also don't want to go into giving the person advice. That's what I suffer from.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure we're actually there for them. And then we proceed with
the person who asks for the space needs to set the expectation from the other person of what they need from that space. Yeah. And I think another thing to point out is that as the person that has been asked for the space, so if I ask you for example and you can't give me that space right now, that should be also voiced. I remember we've gone into a thing when I asked you for a safe space and you said okay, like, but you weren't actually I wasn't actually ready. And that's something we should be able to feel safe to say too. Yeah, exactly. Like being able to say, hey Amor, I would love to have a little safe space conversation right now, and I was wondering if you were able to just give me like 10-20 minutes to just have a conversation about something that's not really working for me. And then you would say, of course Amor, sounds good. I'll meet you in the kitchen in 10 minutes. Or if I can't, I'll be like, oh, okay, more. I would love to be there for you. I want to be at my 100% for you, and listen as much as I can. However, right now, I have a lot in my mind, and I need about 2 hours, so that I can be at 100% for you. Is that something that works for you? Yeah. I think that's something that I would say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it sounds a lot easier now. Oh, fuck. But in the moment, you're like, 1,000 things going through your head. You're like, oh my god, what is happening? Why does she want to talk about this? Oh
Yeah.
shit. What did I do? Did I like forget to like do the thing that I said I was gonna do? What did I say I was gonna do? Like, you're going
you're
through
like
all these
going through
thoughts.
the Rolodex of things
Yeah.
that you had to do and you were gonna do. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's just so something that I like that, and like our therapist said was that, and that's something that I just know for a fact, is just the more you do something, the more you learn to do it, and the more it becomes more natural. So
True.
I think it's really important for us to take those moments and what was it that we were saying?
Take those moments and just express them. Like, is that what you're trying to say?
What were you saying before that?
Oh, so someone's gonna have to edit this part out. I love it. I think that topic is closed.
No, yes. But I just wanted to say that, yes. Oh, when you're not able to hold that space,
Yeah.
sometimes you lie to yourself and you say something like, yeah, of course, give me 10 minutes. I'll meet you in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And then you get to the kitchen in 10 minutes and you're still holding on to something and they
Right.
say something and you snap back at them.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, what a bitch. Like she told me that she was safe and now she snapped at me. Now it's a game for everybody.
Yeah.
And now everybody's going to go at each other's
yeah.
everybody's going to go at each other's throats.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important
Agreed.
to hold that safe space in any culture.
Agreed.
And I hope that I wish we would just teach everybody about this.
Yeah.
Like not teach, but like show and tell.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so that was the first little topic tangent that you wanted to go on.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next thing that I wanted to say about something that we talked about recently was that, when you first got to Jamaica, and it's regarding like mental health and stuff like that, and you were talking about how you had a session with your therapist, and we had just gotten here maybe like a few days into the trip, and you were like, you realized that like it's really hard, like it's a lot of fucking work to like do the work of healing, like it was like we were talking and you were saying how like, yeah, like, you're going through those emotions and you're seeing the triggers and you like have to control yourself and have to talk to yourself, and you have to like control the person that's having a meltdown and control your own emotions, and you're talking to yourself but you're also talking out loud, and you were like, it's just so fucking hard, man.
It is.
And I was like, yeah, like welcome to the warriorship, It's like the constant like putting your like fucking suit on and being like, I am a warrior. I can do this. I can do hard things. Let's go heal. Let's not be scared. So tell me a little bit more about this little uncanny journey of yours of becoming even more of a warrior and realizing that this shit's a hard work.
Yeah. So that's a loaded, like a very.
and you can just like don't have to go as deep as anything you don't want.
Yeah. No, but
safely.
I do want to give context though.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think that's important for anyone to even understand what this even means and why it's even hard. But I think that, I guess to start and tying it back into the whole culture thing, I haven't seen my parents in 4 years, and growing up in Jamaica, I was always not very close with my parents in terms of communication and any of those things. So there was, the communication with them and the relationship.
You guys were culturally not close, like.
Yeah, exactly. Because we moved from China to Jamaica when I was 6 years old, and my parents, had to really put a lot of time, effort, and sweat and tears into working.
In the late 90s, people.
Yeah, 1997 was when we got to Jamaica, and they had to really figure it out, and they had to work, make money, and make a living so that we can all live. And I'm so grateful that they were able to push through and do all of that. But because of all of that, we
and also help like people back at their home,
and family, and
help bring people here, and like always just helping everybody.
Yeah, they're always helping other people, and to the point where they didn't really have a lot of time for themselves, and also for my brother and I, which looking back now makes sense. I understand. There's no resentment. But because of all of that, I think like my life in Jamaica, that distance and how strict they are, and with me going out and experiencing my life, I actually back then I started to become more resentful, you know. And then over time, I moved to in 2011, moved to New York. That's when I felt like I was finally like free and make my own decisions and all that stuff. Live my life. Lived in New York for 9 years, and then moved to Ecuador in 2019, and then lived in Ecuador for 3 years. So now I've been exposed to all these things, all these different cultures, all these different ways of dealing with things.
Yeah.
And now that I've come back to Jamaica, after all that growth that I've had and all the work that I put in myself, now I'm like, okay, I'm ready to kind of go back to Jamaica after having seen my parents in 4 years, and whatever they throw at me, I'll be ready for it. I have all the tools to deal with it, and I know how to be more mature and just have more conversations with them, etc. And then I came back, and then like 3 days into it, I'm like, oh my God, I remember what it was like living back here with my parents and how everything is so intense. Breakfast intense. Eat this, don't eat this, eat more of this, like all that stuff. And then like they're making dinner and they're making breakfast and they're already asking you, hey, what do you want for dinner? So that I can like get it ready for dinner. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just trying to have dinner. And the most difficult part is that I have a partner, Estefi, there with me, that I feel like I want her to have a good time in Jamaica. So I have that in the back of my head of my parents' cultural ways of doing things and their intensity and always asking you like the same thing like 3, 4, 5 times. Pushing food onto you when we have meals, and it's like such a different culture. And then I have to be around that and let Steffi know that it's okay and that's just how it is. But at the same time, I have to respect her boundaries about things as well. And so all of that is not easy to navigate, to say the least. So the first few days, the first week, emotionally draining. I was like, oh my God, tools or no tools, this shit is hard.
Yeah.
And it might not sound that way to like people who haven't experienced this before, but as a Chinese person with Chinese parents, that like I wouldn't say they're closed-minded, but they have their way of doing things that they've done for decades, right? That they've learned. They have their own just way of life, and it's so different from mine, so different from Estefi's. And now I'm coming back with a more like, I would say, like westernized way of thinking, where mental health is first, and super important, and it's about like living in the now, versus in China, it's like you struggle so that you can live in the future. It's like an opposite way of thinking.
But that's, if you think about it, that's like that in the States too. Like
that's not wrong,
like you work so you can retire and live.
That's very
right?
true. Yeah.
So I just think so. Like, yeah, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do this. You can continue.
No, but I think to answer your question, like, so that I can give you the mic as well, is, yeah, it was so challenging. I was so emotionally drained after just a few days, and thank God I had my personal therapist to talk to and just vent all of it out so that I can get it out of my system. Because it's kind of like that. Like, you go into it like fully charged, and then days and days go by and your batteries just start going down and down, and your compassion and your patience just lowers until you kind of snap, whether I snap at you or whether I snap at my parents. I snap, so I think having the therapy session was really helpful with my therapist to recharge that, get my thoughts out, just rant and vent and all that stuff, and then kind of refocus and recenter myself. And then I recenter myself, and then it starts again, and I kind of get drained. And it kind of goes like that for a while until, you start to just start chipping away at the conversation barrier that you have with your parents, that I have with my parents. And we start digging deeper into their past, and me trying to understand more about the way they think and why they have this trauma and this anxiety with this thing. And So I think the tools that I've learned through therapy has been really helpful for me to be more alert and aware in those situations, instead of just going straight into defensive mode and like fighting back at them, because that hasn't worked in the past. And if something isn't working, you kind of try different things. So that's kind of what I'm learning to do now. You know, when there's something that they say that they don't like and they're very hard-headed about it, I try to reason with them in that way, instead of just telling them to like basically like, you know what,
Fuck off.
screw this, yeah, I'm done. That's kind of like that was my mechanism before.
But you would just tell the thing to fuck off, not the people. You're a kind man.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell them to fuck.
Yeah.
No, I would just be like, you know what, like this is like.
But
whatever.
you would just be done.
Yeah, I'll be done. Like like in through one ear, out the other. That type of thing, you know. And now I try not to do that anymore. Even just like yesterday, or the day before when we were here, you were there. Or the first day we got here to the resort, the first meal we had, I had the drama with my parents, and you remember?
Yeah.
On the table when we were eating lunch, and it just exploded out of nowhere, and that was when I had zero patience, and I snapped, and it made her uncomfortable, and she was saying how I don't listen and going at my character, and I'm like, it's not about my character, you know. Sometimes people get overwhelmed, and if you can't listen, and you can't hear, you can't expect other people to listen to you either. So it kind of went deep, because there was just like this drama that happened because she couldn't resist. She couldn't understand that I don't want to talk about this thing right now, but she took it as I never want to hear anything she has to say, and that she has to watch everything she says. It was not about that, but it became that because of her insecurities and her anxieties, which I'm learning more about too, you know. So I was able to like kind of breathe, ask her about it, and let her kind of like explain, and also for me to explain my side, and then it became a better conversation. Before it was not a conversation, because before it was like a blame thing. You as a son, like never, you always like making me watch my words, and you never hear anything that I say, and I'm just like, oh my god, like I basically asked you if we cannot talk about this over dinner or lunch, you know. And by me doing that, she thought that I was just completely dismissing her. Yeah. Again, you know. Yeah. So she remembers the past. But yeah, that's long-winded, but I hope it answered your question. Thank you for your patience.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, I think to summarize your little answer of like why, like what you think it's like really like a battle, like warriorship of like connecting the dots. It's like they're really having to go through everybody, like not everybody's emotions, but for the first time having to go through your emotions as much as everybody else's emotions. And that is really hard because you're like trying to like get your own bearings like you've never kind of bared with before. You know, you've always just been like, oh, I don't want to put my mom or anybody in front of me. Yeah. Like it was like at your own like at your own expense. But now it's a little bit different where you want to like lead with curiosity into getting, and you said this best, like you said this the other day, you said you know, we had talked about what my therapist once shared with me, which was like, because I'm always like data driven in ways, like I always want answers. She's like, just be curious, Steffi. Think about all of this as like different experiments, gathering different types of sets of data with different sets of parameters, and we just like try something, get the answer, go back retrospective, and see how we move forward. And I think you're being a little bit more like that, where you're being more like self-exploratory, curious, but also like more like third person-y even, rather than being the just like the victim, the child or like the victim or even anything. And I think that even just in these 3 weeks that we've been here, like a lot has changed. And I think what you just said about like the awareness, like I've seen like a huge change in you. And I think that exactly what you were saying, like about it's kind of like mini little Instant Pots, like pressure cookers. So you just like kind of start at like the regular Sorry. You're gonna start at the regular set and then you what's going on? You start at the regular set and then you start building and building and building more pressure. And like the
Yeah.
first week, I think it was so good
Yeah.
and just so like new. And like I was like asking questions and like la. And then it's like maybe I went a bit too friendly. And then it was like I had unleashed the beast. And then I was on my period. I menstruated. And after I menstruated, it was like I was depleted of energy. And like I normally need to take space in the month to like be by myself. I do this at home and anywhere. And like those 2-3 days that I was depleted of energy for anybody, it was like your parents were like the most hot. And like I had to like not even show up for dinner once, and I felt so bad, and I was like kind of going through like my own emotions and not trying to take space from your emotions. And before that, I had been so like there to listen to you and be such a good partner. And like I just think like, and you were also trying your best, and you were like, everything's okay and everything's good and it's good and okay. And it just got to the point where I just like I could not do this anymore. Like I was so anxious. I was like holding on to so much pressure inside of me. And then your mom showed me that video, and it was like a really scary video. And it was like I lost a sense of like what's reality and what's not, what's my anxiety, what's not happening, and what's real. And I just sat in the car and I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, like we're all so anxious.
Yeah.
Like it was like this one moment where I was like, holy fuck, like whew,
Yeah.
like oh my gosh. Let's take one deep breath, everybody. Let's go. Go, Major.
No, yeah, I raised my hand. You guys can't see, but no, I agree exactly what you said. We are all these pressure cookers or water heaters
Yeah.
that, or water pots, you know. At some point it's gonna like start bubbling up and pressuring or just start making that sound.
Yeah.
And if you don't deal with it and take your time, it's gonna just explode.
Yes.
And that's the analogy that I used with my parents as well. And that's the analogy that I try to remember whenever things like this happen. You need to take your time. And yeah, just to end this part, and then I know you raised your hand too, is that when I saw you physically and like just visibly seeing like how my parents start to get a little bit too much, or just being around that environment of how intense things are and how the culture is with like always questioning you, always forcing you to eat out of like, and for them it's so funny because for them it's that's like about abundance and about respect and about catering to the host, the person that they're hosting. It's all about giving them a lot of food and like asking them to eat this, try this. So it's very intense. So that part of the culture is like, you know, it has its positives, but at the same time for other people it's very uncomfortable, especially when that person doesn't want to eat that type of food or don't like it or whatever it is. So me being there, and part of it why it was so hard, because I was new to how to deal with that. So I didn't know exactly the best way to say it to them or how to say it to you, or I found myself being in the middle and like, what the hell do I do, you know? And sometimes I'm not there physically either. If I'm in the bathroom and then my mom is with you, that's when she showed you that video, and then the scary video that was very traumatizing. If I was there, she would have showed me and not you, you know? So like that is also something that was adding to my pressure and my stress. I'm like, oh my God, like Steffi's getting stressed out. My parents are walking on eggshells because they think they're doing everything wrong, but then they think they're trying hard and they just don't fully understand. And it's just a lot, you know, and I'm there in the middle just watching all this happening. It's a lot of pressure. And I totally understand what you felt when I first got to Ecuador with you, you know, and how you were basically playing the role that I'm playing now. So we swapped roles, as our therapist said, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think this like role reversal has been so interesting and so mind-blowing, and I think we can have a whole podcast maybe about the role reversal, maybe after we're done with this part, you know, and have all the feedback and data. We can come back and talk about the role reversal. But something that I want to mention is that, like, and even with all the anxiety that Major is saying that we experienced and that I experienced, like, I was very into all the food, and I was very into everything his mom's cooking, and like I really like her cooking and I love her cooking. I think the part that is really this like really uncomfortable is like, and we are talking about culture, is like it's not like the culture is that different, because the more that you explain it, the more it sounds like other people's, like Italian and Latinos and my family. Like my family's like that a lot. Like
That's true.
you go to my parents' house or like my aunt's house, you have a 5-plate dish and you're like literally like vomiting on the way out with like baggies to go, you know? And it's like, so like it's not how or what is being done. It's more like I never thought that my trauma and my triggers could be pushed without language. Like I went through like 4 days of physical anxious terror. Like I was in like an actual episode. Like I was not seeing straight. Like I was losing all of my tools. Like I was so anxious. I was shaking. It was like part of like my post-menstrual cycle, I think. Not pre-post. And like I was just not okay. Like my hormones were out of whack, and like everything that was happening was like triggering me as if like it was my own mother. And like there was commentaries about the body, and then there was like a lot of commentaries about being guilty around food and like things not being good or things being too good. A lot of asking me about like if one food's better than another, and like because of my own history about like with disordered eating and my own family history around food and their control on my food and like their control on like what you eat, what you don't eat, like from good and bad. And then other commentaries and the other things that happened in my own personal life and like our own business. Like it was just, we were doing a lot. We're always doing a lot and we're going through a lot. And like you're saying, like it's all so dependent on like other people in a way, because if you're there, then I'm not asked half of the questions because you're there as like the prime toy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you're not
toy.
there, or sometimes when they're not there, and we can have conversations on Google Translate, for example. Like I can say something and Google Translate, and then they kind of respond back in like broken signs and like language-ish. What gets really hard is when, as aunties, like as people from that generation, they think they come into a situation as, I am doing this because it's better for you, and I know it because I'm older, or I know it because of X. And I think everybody like can relate maybe to that type of auntie feeling, where like they come and they're like, no, like I know more, I know better, and like this is the way you do this. I think that's what's really like, it just like makes me out of whack. Like
That makes sense.
But yeah, but I think it's been really interesting just to have these like cultures and these role reversals and like to be able to explore. Yeah, overall, I think it's been really insightful.
Yeah, to say the least.
To say the least. And I think it's given you a lot of answers and a lot of thoughts, and opened a lot of doors for compassion and thinking. And, you know, it's really made me think about, you know, how brave you are, and all the conversations you're having with your parents about how I'm going to have to like, you know, be this brave at some point.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that my bravery also inspired your bravery now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this role reversal and all of these things situation has been an epic. Like Friday the 13th movie. You know, when they
Was it
swap
that
bodies. You know, no, you
Freddy
know when
versus Jason.
no, when the mom and the daughter swap bodies.
Oh yeah,
Isn't
the
it
age
Friday
reversal.
13th or
No,
Friday?
Freaky Friday.
Freaky Friday.
Friday the 13th. That's like
Okay,
Michael Myers.
okay, and I'm almost done. I'm almost done sharing. I just want to say one thing, and then I'm done, and then you can close out the podcast because it's 40 minutes.
Okay.
So we're sitting at the table with Meijun's cousin. We're talking about like, you know, like teenager, like we're in a group of like Chinese like adults, like his mom, his uncle, his dad, Meijun, me at dinner, something casual, like everybody's shitting about how this kid's like, you know, like always playing video games and doesn't talk or whatever. And Meijun's way of connecting with his teenage cousin
Oh my god.
was to say to him, we're sitting at the table, nobody's saying anything else, like parents are speaking
Awkward
Chinese,
silence.
awkward kind of silence, and he goes, so hey Andy, so do you still like math? So do you still like math?
Oh
And
my
I
God.
go, is that your way of trying to start a conversation with him? Like,
To break
how
the
about
ice.
how about you go like, you know, what's your favorite video game? Like, I like this. Like, I go, so what were you thinking was going to come off this conversation? So do you like math? Like, yeah, I still like math. So like, how about like, you know, square root or algebra? like what were you thinking that conversation was going to go?
wasn't thinking.
And I just cracked up laughing and I couldn't do it anymore. And Adrian was going through a shame storm of his own. But that was how I wanted to end the podcast.
That's so funny. Thank you for
So if
sharing
you have
that.
a Chinese anything family, an Ecuadorian family, anything, just let us know your little culture family stories. Okay, what were you going to say? Finish us off.
Yeah, so I'll try to be as quick as possible. I guess I wanted to share a little bit of what I've just learned from this podcast that we've just recorded, talking about like our cultures and as it relates to conflict resolution and just ways of doing things, like the food thing. It just sounds like, based on your feedback as well, is that sometimes the cultures, even though they seem and feel really different, when you really look at the grand scheme of things, they're quite similar, you know? And that's something I haven't really like realized, like because like with the food thing, about like how my parents are have told me, like, when we always offer more food and tell people to finish this, is because they that's how you be a good host. That's kind of like how all of your aunts and even your parents have done with me. Like every time there's this big meal, always asking me if I want seconds, and like asking me like if I want more of this or that. That's true. So I'm just kind of putting those dots together. So it's not just like a Chinese thing, but it is still part of that culture. And I think the difference is that the language, you were hearing it in a different language, it feels different.
You don't hear it. You just listen to sounds.
You listen to
like,
this. Yeah, it's true.
It's like a mute movie.
They kind of just have to pick up on
like a soundless movie. I mean, not soundless, but
yeah. I guess I guess my point is, like, even though all our our cultures are so different, there are things that we can relate to and understand more about each other. The more as you said, the more you're seeing me in my environment in Jamaica with my parents, how things were and how things are with them, you're learning a little bit more and getting more of the context. You mentioned that word is such an important word, because me being in Ecuador for 3 years, I understood the context of your culture, like as it pertains to your family. And I can pick up on things more when you're stressed. The tone in which you guys are having conversations, the topics that are usually sparking some kind of drama, and I pick up on that. Before, I was very ignorant about it, oblivious. You kind of hid me from those things. And then you know, as I said, living in Ecuador for 3 years, I was able to learn more. You shared more. You brought me in so that I can
Yeah,
be
it's
more
like I had
supportive.
to. Like there was no way to hide. Like
Yeah.
there's like this is something that we were talking. And no, we said we were going to stop now, but this is something that we were talking with our therapist about,
Yeah.
which was like the culture doesn't have to become you and doesn't
Yeah.
have to be you just because you were raised in it
Right.
and like around it. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be you.
Yeah.
You can choose what you want and when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that he says is like, when we were first talking, when we first moved to Ecuador, I was able to hide you from things and like whatever. But then at some point I just had to like kind of let you in on everything, and also you learn the language.
Yeah.
But here, even though we've like role switched it in a little bit, I still can't understand any of the language, and I can't probably, I don't know if I'll ever really be able to fully understand.
Right.
Hopefully I'll be able to like learn speaking it the more we like converse with them. But yeah, I think that's like a huge thing that we learned right now, even in this podcast, is like how there can be so many similarities in even doings, cultures, systems, etc.
Yeah.
But the language part of it is always just so important. And we were saying that, we were writing about this, we were saying how it's like in communication, like communications in language themselves like are just such important tools.
Yeah.
And we're saying how it's like just one little thing gets lost and everything is like fucked.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you have to really explain the context of it all.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like with the whole language thing that you just mentioned too.
Yeah.
Just to, I'll share my final thoughts too. Is that because you don't understand like Hakka Chinese, when there's something happening, I'm kind of that filter to decide whether or not. So in that moment, I'm making a decision whether or not it's even important to translate it to you.
Yeah.
Does she even need to be bothered by this? Is it even about her? Does she need to know or not? And then I go through those filters, and if it's yes, I'll translate. If no, I tell you, hey, it's not important. Or even when you can't understand anything that's happening on the table, when I'm having like a heated argument or conversation with them, like what happened recently, I would tell you, hey, Amor, I'm okay. I'm just having a very like a deep conversation with them right now.
Which is something we added since whenever there was a conversation, I felt like I was like in limbo and I never knew like if it was safe, if it was like I should save you, if it's heated, or like if it's like happy. Yeah. So we implemented this new thing, which was like just letting each other know like, hey, like this is a safe conversation. It's fine. We're just going to take our time. There's not going to be translations anytime soon. Yeah. Because now you're kind of talking and you're like, hey, so what did you guys say? So what is this? So
and that
what
adds
is that?
To the
and it adds to the intensity, but it also feels like it adds to my context. Like it makes me feel like I'm actually a part of it. If not, you're going to like feel like this little like zoo person. True. You know?
It's like, I know exactly what that feels like. Yeah. That was kind of what I felt like the first year in Ecuador.
And I think we can continue to talk about this in like another episode. I think this was a really nice 15 minutes to sit with you guys and talk about culture and how it's been for us this past little month. We'll continue to touch upon these topics. We'll continue to talk about our role reversal, context switching, context themselves, setting expectations, how that is just something that's literally surrounding every single one of our arguments ever. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Instagram is perfect syndrome, and like always wanting to like just be perfect human being, even though it's not realistic. And yeah. There's so much. And I just love you. I love being here. Thank you, Mayjun, for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Talking with all these amazing, awesome people. And yeah, again, if there's any thoughts or anything that came to your mind, if you have an interracial relationship or friendship or family or anything, I'd love to talk and chat more about this. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye friends. Bye.